Hello, and welcome to How Memory Works with Miss Jarman. This lesson is for middle schoolers, but I think it can work for you older and younger kids too. And this lesson is for those of us who go to class, really believe that we're paying attention, hear every word that the teacher says, read every word that we're supposed to read, and then later we just don't remember any of it at all, or have a very hard time remembering it. This lesson will explain sort of a very, very easy version of how our brains work and how we remember things. And hopefully, once you understand that, you'll be able to more easily remember what you hear and read in class. All right, here we go. Literally everything about being alive is happening in our brains. It is happening right now. Brains are very complicated. They have a lot of jobs and they have a lot of parts to do each job. That includes telling your heart to beat, telling you to know when you're hungry or thirsty, telling you when to be scared and when to be calm. Everything from seeing to hearing to remembering the Caillou theme song from when you were 2 and all and in between. But what we're going to talk about today is a very particular part of the brain. It's called the hippocampus. And it's kind of right here-ish, and it's kind of shaped a little curvy-ish. And the hippocampus is where our memories are stored. All right, science people, I know I probably got it way wrong, but just hang in there with me. We're just talking ideas right now. Here we go, hippocampus. Well, here's a slightly more accurate drawing of the hippocampus than the one I just did, and it is the part of your brain that helps you remember. If you have me for class this year, then you've watched this happy little ridiculous video of the singing hippo, singing about how the hippocampus helps you remember. It is silly, but it will help you remember. The hippocampus, the part of your brain that helps you remember. Here's an analogy that's a little more accurate than a singing and dancing hippo. We have a lot of memories in the hippocampus. Just like a library has a lot of books. Think of your memory like a library that's filled with books. We have so many memories in there, and they're not super well organized either. So all of those memories can get lost inside the hippocampus. Or maybe the memories never even make it into the hippocampus in the first place. We hear and see a lot of things day to day that just simply don't ever get put in that library. So when that happens, that's when we forget. When a memory gets lost inside the hippocampus and you can't find it anymore, or if the memory never even made it in there in the first place. That's what happens when we forget. Now, the thing about brains is that a brain can only remember what it thinks is important. And sometimes the brain has a different idea what's important than we do. For example, think about if you are sitting in class, listening to your teacher, trying to pay attention, and suddenly the fire alarm rings. Well, your brain is going to pay more attention to that because it's a big, loud, scary noise. And your brain is trying to keep you alive more than anything else. Brains also tend to remember the things that we love and care about the most. And that only makes sense, right? The things that you love and find really, really interesting, your brain is just automatically going to hang on to and remember. So if something feels boring to you, then your brain won't remember it. Even if it actually is important, your brain is not going to grab onto that information if it senses that you are bored, and that information is just going to float away like a balloon. The brain will not automatically latch on to what your teacher is saying about adding with a single variable, for example, if it's not the fire alarm. Your brain is only going to automatically remember what really makes a big impact on it. And so a teacher talking is maybe not necessarily going to go in. You might be hearing every word, you might be showing a lot of focus, but if you're not actively working to remember what your teacher is saying, it's pretty likely that that memory is just going to float away like a balloon. So this is what we do to make sure that those important things don't float away like a balloon. There are two tools that help us add new memories to that library. We can add new memories to the library, the hippocampus, if we put them away very mindfully with cues and strategies. So the brain won't automatically remember something, but we can tell it to. We can help those memories make it into the hippocampus. Cues and strategies. Let's talk about cues first. Cues are what your teacher does to help you know what's important to remember. Think about how your teachers deliver a lesson. If they're a really good teacher, they probably don't just stand there and talk the whole time. They're probably also showing you a PowerPoint or drawing on the board. They're probably handing out things for you to glue into your notebook or telling you to write things into your notebook. When we're in the classroom, there are anchor charts on the wall and word walls and all sorts of cues to help you know what's important to remember. It's all important, but some of it is super, super important. And if you pay attention, you will notice that your teachers do different things to make sure that you know what's important to remember. Really listen next class you have and see if you can spot what your teacher's cues are. Some teachers, like I've been told that I talk more slowly when I really want you to remember. That's a cue. Another thing that I do in Miss Jarman's class, if I'm teaching something very, very, very important, I will say to my students, okay, know it forever, here it is. And then they know, okay, no, really this thing we got to remember. Teacher cues. Really pay attention for them next time you have a class. You'll be able to see all the different ways that your teachers are letting their students know, hey, this is really important to remember. So that's the teacher's job. And the student's job is the strategies. Strategies are what you do to remember what's important. So when you get that cue from your teacher, what are you going to do to really make sure that your brain grabs that information and holds it and pulls down that balloon and gets that memory into the library, even if it's a little bit boring? You need a strategy. There are a lot of them. These are only 6. These are the ones that we are working on in my class that I'm teaching. But if you Google it or look on my Schoology page, there are lots more. These are the big 6 that we're using. Hold on, let me get a pen and I will take you on a happy tour of all these. Okay, so chunking, that means that you take all the information and you put it in little smaller categories. And the example is this person is carrying all these rando letters. It's going to be really hard to remember them. But when they're chunked into categories that make sense, now they only have 4 things to remember: FBI, CBS, IBM, IRS. Much easier to remember than this random string of letters. Draw it. This is probably my favorite. And this is a drawing that I did last year to help a student remember how to spell and say my name. My name is Miss Jarman, and so I drew a picture of a jar, and then inside the jar I drew a picture of a man, and then later a student came and made it dabbing instead, which, makes it even easier to remember. So now people know that you say my name Jarman, and you spell it jar man, and that was easy for them to remember because we did the drawing. Write it down. This is the one your language arts teachers love the most. If you've ever used Post-its to keep track of what you're reading, that is a great way to remember what is important when you read. Our brains just are not going to hold all that information in, so we need sort of a bucket to put it in, and writing it down is a great kind of bucket. Teach someone else. I love this one too, and we do this in the Jarman house with my own boy and girl, where after school and after the day is done and we're all sitting down to dinner, I will ask them to teach me something that they learned in school, and then they learn it better by teaching it to me. You can do this too. I bet the adults in your life would love to be taught something that you learned in school today. So next time you sit down together, or next time you're maybe going for a long drive in the car, tell them about something you learned in science, or history, or language arts. Here's another fun one. Wordplay. And the best example I can think of is that hippo song to remember hippocampus. Your hippocampus helps you remember. Wordplay. Make it novelty. We do a lot of this. Remember in elementary school when your teachers taught you never eat sour watermelons for north, east, south, and west? All kinds of things. Rhymes, wordplay. I'm going to have another video about this, probably multiple videos about this on my Schoology page, because wordplay and mnemonics are a really, really big category. And I didn't want to bore everybody to death with just me talking about it, but yeah, let's do more with that. But let me talk about the last strategy, and maybe the best one of all, maybe the easiest one of all, and that is to take care of your body. One of my students today had a really, really sharp day. We were playing a memory game, and he was just getting the answers so quick and so fast. And when we were done playing, I said, "Hey, how did you do that? What strategy were you using?" And he said, "I wasn't really using a strategy." And then he thought for a minute, and he said, "Oh, but I got enough sleep last night." And that is a strategy too. Making sure you get enough sleep every night, especially on the nights before you have school the next day. Eating healthy, exercising, especially when we're in remote learning. I mean, you really can very easily just stand up at your desk and stretch or twist or jog in place and get your brain moving. So these are just a few strategies, and there's many more and a lot more in depth about these, but just a start. So when you're really paying attention for those teacher cues, and then when you're using your strategies to pull down that balloon and pull that information into your memory, those tools help us catch those new memories and put them away very mindfully in that library, which is our hippocampus. It takes a lot more work. It's a lot easier to remember all the lines from your favorite movie or all the characters from your favorite comic book series, because that's fun and that's exciting and you like it and your brain knows that you like it. So it's easy to remember all that stuff. It takes harder work to remember the school stuff, but it is possible. All you need is to focus on your teacher's cues and to use your strategies. And that is how you pull the memory down and catch it and put it away very mindfully in that library. Well, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that once that memory is stored in your library and it's in your hippocampus and it's in your long-term memory, it will always be there. anything that you've ever remembered and learned really, really well, it is still there. Now here's the bad news. It can get lost in there. If you don't take that memory out and use it and practice it regularly, it won't go away, but it will get lost. And if you don't practice going back in to get it, then you might actually lose your strategy for how to find it. So here's what you need to do. When there's something that you want to keep remembering, you've got to go back into your library, back into that long-term memory, and you've got to get it out, and you've got to practice it the same as you did when you were first learning it. Think about your multiplication tables. I knew mine very well when I was in school. It took me a very long time to learn them. I didn't know them for real until I was probably in about 6th grade, believe it or not. But once I knew them, I really knew them, and I used them all the time. But then, when I was about maybe 30 years old or so, and my kids were learning the multiplication tables for the first time, and I went to help them, didn't remember a lot of them anymore, especially the 7s. I just did not have it anymore. Well, I did have it. It was a book deep in my library, but I hadn't gone in to get it in so long that I couldn't remember how to find it and get it out. But once I started practicing and helping my kids with it and working on it every day, it came right back because I found it again. So once you've got that memory stored, you got to go back in, take it out, use it, put it back, take it out, use it, put it back, so that it doesn't get lost. And that is all I have for you today. But that is not all there is. There's a lot more to learn about memory and strategies for how to remember things. So if you're interested in this, if you have me for a teacher, I'll have a lot of other links on my Schoology page and a lot more information. If you have a different teacher, I would suggest that you ask maybe your science teacher, maybe your study skills teacher, or if you take psychology, you could ask them more about how memory works and how you can exercise to get better at remembering things. All right, and that is it. That's the end. Thank you for watching. Go forth and have a beautiful day.